Running your own business is hard work for anyone, but turning it into a real profit center takes skill and experience. And here today to share her expertise is Hockley Valley Resort owner Nancy Adamo. Thank you for being with us, Nancy.
My pleasure to be here.
Nancy, you've been rated one of the top 100 business leaders. You've also been named a leader in entrepreneurship among women in the entire world. Most of your work has focused in the hospitality industry, but that's not actually where you got your start.
No, actually, I was a school teacher before we went into the hospitality industry.
And how old were you then?
21.
Okay. And what ages were the children you taught?
I taught grade 7 and 8, junior high, for about 5 years before we went into the business.
And what was it that made you change your mind? Business and teaching, very different.
Very, very different, but I always say it gave me the background for my organization skills to run a business. It really had no intention. I loved teaching when I was teaching, and I remember coming home one day, and my husband was really the breadwinner. He had a couple of hair salons throughout the city, and my teaching was something that I loved to do, but we knew it was probably I was going to have a family soon and not be there for a very long term. And I remember coming home one day and he said to me, you know, I can't be a hairdresser at 60 years old. And I kind of felt my security blanket, where at that time was completely taken away, and I figured, what do you mean? What are we going to do? And it was at this time that we decided to go into the catering business.
And your first project centered around catering for weddings, and you opened a company called La Gondola. From what I've heard, you really changed the way weddings were done at the time. And what was so different about what you did?
Well, first of all, there was very little places that were doing the big ethnic weddings.
Okay.
So we saw it being a very lucrative business because there was really not an awful lot of competition. But what we decided to do is to come in with a whole new philosophy of really, really raising the bar and providing phenomenal food and really upscale service.
And in the past, I know ethnic weddings were more family run. The family did the cooking, brought it to the celebration, and you were offering something all-inclusive, and that was also new.
Yes, it was, and it really took off incredibly in the very beginning because there was a need for this type of a business where people could come and do all their shopping in one particular facility, and we looked after everything.
So that was a huge success. That brought you all the way to 1982. You created a new normal in the hospitality industry, and then you decided, well, let's bring the family in. And I know you were raised with family as a very important part of your life. And tell me exactly how you got the family involved next.
Well, because the business was so successful and my husband was still running his hair salons for about 7 years, we decided to bring my 2 brothers and my sister into the business. And we started branching out into fast food chain, and we also opened up a restaurant that was named after my family name, La Gambas, in Village by the Grange. So we had 3 fast food chains in the various malls and La Gambas in Village by the Grange.
Wow.
And at this point, the entire family, both my 2 brothers and my sister, were in the business with us.
Let's talk a little bit about where your parents came from and your idea of family and where you got those cultural values. Your parents immigrated to Canada?
My parents were both immigrants. They came from Italy. I always wonder how difficult it must have been for the immigrants at that time to come here. They came here to sort of provide a better life for their children. And I remember at a very, very early age seeing how hard they worked. And I remember saying to myself, I will never work that hard, and I am going to make a difference someday in my life.
And are you working that hard now?
3 times as hard.
Of course. And what was it that they did?
They were laborers. My mother was a cook for a Jewish company. My father did all kinds of different labor jobs, whatever we're able to find. It wasn't that easy way back 55 years ago to come here and be an immigrant in this country. Opportunities weren't like they are today. Mm-hmm. So they worked very, very hard. And
as much as you say you didn't want to turn out working as hard as they worked, maybe you can thank them for your work ethic.
I am so very, very grateful for the ethics that I got from watching them work, absolutely.
So now you've successfully opened your own wedding, catering and banquet business, fast food chains, a restaurant with the family name, and then we move on to the next project, taking it to the next level. And that was also a business that had to do with weddings. Tell me about that.
In 1982, I think when you are a true entrepreneur, that spirit is always within you. And what happens is you're always looking for a new challenge when things are running smoothly. And that's how I really think a true entrepreneur is. In 1981 and 82, when everything was running smoothly, my husband and I decided we needed to grow. And at that time, we borrowed money at 21% to build the Verde Hospitality Center, which we still own.
And how much money did you borrow at that time?
We needed $2 million at the time to do that. But unfortunately, the rest of the family did not see that need to grow. And this is where we sort of separated the business. And they stayed with La Gamba, which was the family restaurant, and the fast food chains. And La Gondola was then sold to my sister.
Okay. So now your husband and you are taking on a venture, just the two of you, La Verde. And tell me about how that raised the bar in the industry as well. I know you did things differently for the first time with La Gondola. What did you do differently at La Verde? How did you make your name?
Well, I had a huge advantage at this point because I had 12 years of experience. I knew exactly what the customer wanted, what they were looking for, and unlike when I left teaching, we had all the experience that we really needed because we understood what the customer really was after at this point.
Had anyone done it at such a large scale? Because La Verde, capacity of 1,200. Was that heard of at the time?
No, it was that, and that's another thing that we did. We decided to really grow, that we could do more than one wedding, we could do multiple weddings, and we decided to add a restaurant to the facility.
So for a good 10 years, really, you were working very closely with your family. Now, that could have had its ups and downs.
And it certainly does. I think working with family is probably one of the toughest things that you have to do. What certainly keeps you together is having the same values, the same background, and the same philosophies in business.
You, a workaholic, would you call yourself?
It used to be.
Okay.
It used to be.
Now, by 1982, you have a family of 4. You're running a few very, very successful businesses. You're financially secure, and yet you're ready to take another risk. And you actually purchased a property 40 minutes outside of Toronto, north of the city. And from what I've heard, it was a broken down motel with a checkered past. Tell me about what your vision for what is now Hockley Valley Resort and Spa was.
I think it's important to note here that we had absolutely no intention of taking this project on. And at the suggestion of a local real estate agent who knew both my husband and I and knew the entrepreneurial spirit that we had, thought if anybody could turn it around, it would be us. When we first looked at the property, I mean, I wanted to run as fast as I could the other way because I can't begin to tell you how awful it really looked, and I really thought it would take a miracle to really turn it around. But it's that drive and that challenge, and for the most part, when you have the passion for the business, I don't think we ever really stopped and really analyzed the risk.
Okay, but you did do a study.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and you looked into the potential that the property would have.
It's at this time when I learned of the checkered past. They had hosted the Miss Nude World pageant there. It was a motorcycle gang. There was all kinds of drug haven, it was known as. And it was at this point that I realized that we had only 2 options at the end of the season. And number 1 was to put a for sale sign and run as fast as we could in the other direction. Or number 2, it was to really dedicate ourselves to make it a world-class resort, which is the only thing I ever wanted to be associated with. We had nothing to really bring our clients in the summertime or to keep them there in the summertime. They were all opting out to go to the beautiful Muskokas. Mm-hmm. So we needed something, and after much research, it really became very evident that golf was the fastest growing sport in Canada. So we really needed to purchase an additional 100 acres of land to be able to encompass the golf course at the resort.
Let's talk a little bit about what sort of amenities and facilities you have now. I know recently you've opened a world-class spa. Tell me about that and what else you've got to offer.
Well, the spa is our latest addition. Again, the spa is one of the fastest growing industries right now. We're finding that a lot of people are opting out to the spa, which is wonderful. I've been a spa goer for years and traveled to Europe every year and enjoy spas. And this has been a blessing for us because we're finding that, in particular with what has happened in the industry lately, it's really what's kept us really afloat. So the spa is the latest one, but we have golf, We have dining, we have catering, a hotel with 104 rooms. We have beautiful trails that run through the property. Skiing, another major event that takes place at the place at Hockley.
So you turned a 28-room hotel into a resort and spa. I know you employ close to 300 people. You have 10 departments reporting to you. How do you feel?
It actually feels great to be able to get to where we are today, because it certainly was not that easy all the time.
Well, the amount of dedication you have must require patience and support from your family, because you are working very long hours and are very dedicated. And I know at one time you and your husband were working very closely, where he was doing the catering and you were doing the business aspect. But Hockley Valley is really your baby. Isn't that true?
Yes, it is.
And how does it feel when you go home, and how does your family work into the picture, and are they understanding when mommy has to go and get some work done? Or
the children now are, I mean, the youngest is 23.
Oh, well.
So, but it certainly was, in the early years, was very, very difficult. And the only way I was able to do this is by having an incredibly supporting family. In particular, my husband, who was my pillar of strength. Like, I remember leaving the house at 6 a.m. and not getting home till about 2 o'clock in the morning during the construction of Hockley. And that really required an enormous amount of understanding and help at home also. The children were also very part of it. We always used to sit around the table and I involved them and I used to discuss the project, and we used to have this as a family project that we would all sit around the table and discuss it.
And make business decisions.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Now, have your children followed in your footsteps at all?
I have 2 that have, and 2 that absolutely have no desire to do so.
Okay. And are you happy with both of those
Absolutely.
decisions?
Absolutely.
Now, you've been known as the Queen of Delegators, which is kind of interesting. Is that a trick of the trade?
I think one of the biggest problems that most entrepreneurs have is that they become control freaks and they need to do everything. And consequently, I think they become slaves to their passion. I discovered very quickly, because I had no choice, when we grew so quickly from doing it all to having to delegate, that unless that happened very quickly in my business, I would never survive. So yes, I've learned to do that very, very well, and certainly out of a need to do so.
And so what part do you play in the actual running of the business now? Now that it's established, it almost maybe runs itself. Do you get a little more free time?
Absolutely, and I think my role has changed dramatically over the years, from doing it all and making every decision to almost making very little right now. I don't make any decisions on my own. There's always a group of people, and right now my focus is really standing at the top and looking down at the entire organization, but not doing any of it.
And let the people who do it best do it.
Absolutely.
For you. If you could say what was your major challenge, and take a look at all the projects you've done, was there one point in your life where you said, this is really tough, and you just really weren't sure?
I think there were many times when we were doing the construction that it would have been so much easier to throw in the towel. But I think as a leader, people look at you for motivation, for inspiration, for the drive. And I always felt that my role was always to stay focused and stay very positive.
So who is your inspiration? Everyone's looking to you for that motivation. Did you have someone to look to?
I really think it's my mother.
Oh, really?
My mother, yes. My mother is not a very well-educated woman, but has the wisdom of, I always say she's got more wisdom than anybody that I know. And I looked at her strength, coming here with 5 small children, starting a new beginning, and has always been my greatest inspiration.
Are there any tricks to the trade? Is there one general rule, or 2 or 3, in running a successful business?
I think first and foremost, you've got to really love what you're doing. Because if you love what you're doing, it really, really transpires into everything else. You know, people look up to you, and that passion, I think, that you have really translates into everything that they do. But if you love what you're doing, you're passionate, I think it's a sure go.
And what about people who just don't have the money to invest, or aren't sure how to get that money to invest? All is not lost, or is it?
Well, again, I didn't come from a business background or had any financial background. And again, as a woman, I was able to raise over $25 million. And I say, you know what? Believe in yourself. Mm-hmm. definitely believe in yourself.
Now, in the past, you've taken on projects. They've lasted between 5, 10, or more years, and once they start to run themselves successfully, it seems you're looking for something new. And now that Hockley Valley Resort and Spa seems to be running itself, as you said, what's your next project?
Well, of course we'd have a next project.
Of course.
We've just purchased 300 acres, of which we're looking at developing another new project, which is about 15 minutes from Hockley, and it will be another golf course, spa, and hotel.
Really?
Yes.
And what about the location? Why do you think that will work? I mean, the two seems as though they could be competing, or is that a trick?
They will be competing, except that we would be building at a different level.
Okay.
Our next project will be the Four Seasons North.
Really?
Of Toronto, yes, which I think could help enhance rather than compete.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
So a step higher?
Exactly.
Okay, wow. So you're a woman of luxury and elegance. Tell me about how you live each day at home, what you surround yourself with at home and that sort of thing.
Well, actually, my life has changed dramatically since I've started to take some time off. I love my pets. I have a dog, which absolutely is my best and dearest friend.
Fantastic. And how much time do you allow off a year?
Quite a bit right now.
Okay.
I think it's really, really important as an entrepreneur to sort of sit back and smell the coffee at times. And I've worked very, very hard in my life, but right now it really is a time that I'm reflecting and really having more of a balance in my life rather than just work.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that will be the key to your future success?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, a lot of people that meet you or know of you, in many cases, look up to you and think, wow, she's living a dream. But it must have not all been peachy. There must have been some very tough times.
Oh, incredible tough times. During the construction of Hockley Valley Resort, one of the toughest balances that I had was balancing my family life with my business life. I, at that time, had 4 young children. And it was, I came very, very, very close to a nervous breakdown. I remember working 16, 18 hours a day, like literally 7 days a week to see this project finish. And I remember many nights crying all the way home and just asking God, give me the strength to see this finish, because I didn't think that I would have the strength to see this project finish. It was very, very, very tough.
Did that affect your relationship with your husband?
That's a great question, because I look at some of the younger generation today, and I look at my husband and I, who've been married 34 years and very happily married. And I think one of the blessings we had was the fact that he came from the same industry. So he knew what it was like to put 16, 18 hours, because he had done it with me in the past. So I think that was very, very, was key in our relationship, because he understood. Okay. He understood what it was like. He was also very good in also taking part of the looking after the children. I mean, somebody needed to be home with the children also. And it couldn't have been both of us working those godly hours. And because it was my project, we decided that.
How old were your children at the time?
When we took over Hockley, the youngest one was 6 and the oldest one was 11.
Wow. Now, we know you have about 300 employees just at the Hockley Valley Resort and Spa. And we've had some tough years. In the 90s, we had a recession. You were just growing. You weren't only feeling responsible for taking care of your own family and the amount of money you put into this, basically risked everything you owned. But what about the 300 families? Or at the time there may have been less, but what about your employees? And how responsible did you feel there?
Very responsible. And actually that created an enormous amount of stress for me, because in 1990, when we had just finished the construction and the golf course, we opened up during the worst recession this country has ever seen. And to have that amount of employees, I felt they were part of my family. I always feel my employees are part of my family. And yes, one of the things that was an enormous amount of stress was the fact that these people depend on me to have a job. And it was not easy, but we made it.
And how did you do it? How'd you deal with the stress anyway?
It's really interesting, because I have a key employee that always says, I would always look at the way you walked into the front door every morning. And if you had a smile on your face, we knew things were okay. So it was very difficult, but I always made sure that by the time I got from my car to the front door, I always had a smile on my face. Because I think if you stay positive and if you stay focused on what really is important, I really think everything falls together. And it certainly did for me.
Was it difficult as a member of the Italian community moving 40 minutes north of Toronto to a town that is set in its ways and not very ethnic at the time? Were there any cultural barriers you faced?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I would drive home and say, why am I doing this? And there were times also that during the early recession where it probably would have been a lot easier to throw in the towel and given up, but it's not who I am. For myself, you know, setting or setting the example or leading by the example really is what motivated my staff. I wouldn't think twice about making beds, washing dishes, getting in the kitchen if I needed to, vacuuming if I needed to. And I think them seeing this is, wow, this is incredible. If she can do it, then we can do it. And it really, I think, is what sort of helped me to break that barrier. I was never afraid to get my hands dirty.
And you still do today?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
There's no job that's...
I've done them all, and that's great because I also know what my staff goes through, having done it all. So,
So you can empathize with them.
Absolutely.
Now tell me about how you spend your free time. I know you did say that you're often horseback riding, you're spending more time in the outdoors, and your dog is your best friend. Now, when did you get Toby?
4 years ago. And it's really interesting because I grew up with an incredible amount of fear for animals. My mother was always afraid, so consequently we were afraid. And never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would have the pets that I have today. And when we got Toby, we bought him as a German Shepherd because we really felt he was an outdoor dog, and I would never imagine having a dog living in the house with us. Well, let me tell you that this dog is king of the castle.
Oh.
He has his own couch, and he rules the house.
And he's sitting on the good linens, I'm guessing?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what other animals do you have?
We have 5 cats.
Okay.
We got sheep. I got 2 sheep about a year ago thinking that we were going to grow our own sheep and whatnot, but we made the mistake of naming them, and now they are our pets.
Okay.
And they have multiplied, and they are our pets, and we really, really love and enjoy going out, feeding them, cleaning them, giving them water, bringing them in, taking them out of the barn. It's just so much fun.
So you're living here in the new world, let's say, running a successful business, but now it seems you've brought the farm animals to Canada as well. You're keeping it simple again.
That's right.
And do you think that has something to do with your roots?
Absolutely. And I think it's so important, I think, to just stay grounded. And I find that there just completely grounds me, and it's so therapeutic when I go out there and I spend the time with them.
Looking at your children, how do you feel? What goes on in your head?
My children are truly the inspiration of my life. One of the things that I always taught them was to follow their dream. And it isn't necessarily to come into the family business. And like I've said, 2 of the children absolutely have no desire of being in the family business. But they are really doing what they love to do. My oldest daughter is an actress. She's right now doing a play here in Toronto, and loves theater, and is just incredibly inspired by what she is doing. My other daughter, who started off, actually opened up the spa at Hockley Valley and has done a phenomenal job, is right now in Santa Barbara opening up another spa that has just different elements to it to bring in more experience, hopefully, into the family business. So she's very interested in the family business. My oldest son is an entrepreneur, and he's always doing his thing. And again, God bless him, just has his own ideas about doing things very differently, and very much encouraged to do that.
And not in the hospitality
industry? Not
industry?
in the hospitality at all. Not what he wants to do. My youngest son is presently at the CIA, the Culinary Institutes of the Americas. He graduated in Switzerland in hotel management, and he, I think, is going to probably be the one that will someday step in my shoes. Very, very dedicated. From the age of 2, all he ever wanted to do was to cook
Wow.
And I remember him doing that at a very early age, pulling all my pots and pans, getting our garlic and stirring and saying he's cooking. And right now he will be graduating from the CIA, the Culinary Institutes, in November, and has said that definitely wants to come and work in the family business. So that will be a new challenge, but very interesting to see what happens with that.
Well, I can tell you're a very proud mother, and that must make you think, well, I did it. I had the best of both worlds. And I know some mothers, even today, with the need to work in the state of our economy, can you make it work is the question we often ask.
There's no doubt in my mind you can make it work, but I think sometimes as women we have to be careful not to try to be super women in everything we do, and not to be afraid to ask for help. Like for me, I had a nanny, and I needed the stability in my family. Coming from an Italian background, family is very, very important. I needed something to keep it really together. So for me, having the nanny, having my parents always there, my husband played a major role in that there, is very, very important.
And so your family never went without.
Exactly.
If there's one statement, your mission statement in life, what would that be?
I think to be able to do what you love to do is got to be the most valuable thing anybody in this world could have. It's wonderful to get up in the morning and be excited about going to work, be excited about being something that you love doing, and being excited about getting other people excited with you. I think it's wonderful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Nancy.
My pleasure.
You've been sitting down with us for one-on-one with our guest, Nancy Adamo. Thank you so much for being here, Nancy.
My pleasure.
We hope you'll tune in next week. I'm Jayme Quinn. Thanks for watching.